evening, everybody, and welcome to DnDTime Worlds, a place where all of us together will continue to create, we'll do the work of gods as we build worlds together as one. How about good to see you. I see Shiva out there. How about an ascot? I mean, one of these days I could definitely get an ascot, but I have none of them. All I have are these shiny white, all I have is this shiny white bow tie when it comes to being fancy. Indeed, I'm excited to get into the act of more and more world building. Hello, Fox. Good evening. It's good to see you. Hello. Hello, Luminarian. I've been saying Luminieron, which is wrong for a long time, but I think I finally have it down to Luminarion. So yeah, I'm excited to just dive in. Last time we did some, thank you, Psychopath. I'm gonna need to come up with some more, I'm gonna need to come up with some more bits. As you said, the glasses and book bit made you laugh. I'm gonna need a new bit, because I don't know how long I can run that one. Yeah, I've had a crazy night. I'm with you. Well, now is the time, Fox, to wind down and just make up some stuff for our fantasy world. Oh, but you cut your thumb while cooking. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what this show is for anyone who was not here last time and is here today. What we do on this show is starting from scratch. Last time we built just a world that is designed to play Dungeons and Dragons, in particularly 5th edition, although I'm sure that the things that we came up with could be applied to pretty much any role-playing game, any edition, assuming it was designed for high fantasy settings. But we're building that world from scratch. We're coming up with everything. We're doing our Pantheon ourselves. We're going to be doing our designing terrains, locations, factions, all of this sort of stuff. And we got a great start last time. And we'll talk a little bit about what we did last time as we get into the thick of it in a bit here. Any announcements? I think the answer to that question is no. I would like people's opinion on one thing. I was considering for some future DnDTime Worlds episodes, obviously not today, in setting up a playlist and just having some very soft, relaxing classical music playing in the background while we do the stream. If that's something that you think you would be interested in, then let me know. Or if you think it would distract too much from the content, that would also be bad, so let me know that too. Loom in air en. Yes, I have it. I have it now. It's locked in. Psychopath says, hopefully a world that one day becomes a West March style game for P&J to run on a different day in the week, increasing their workload even more. Yeah, I don't know about increasing our workload more, as Pete and Jeremy's D&D time is already pretty tough. I don't know if we could ever do a workload. Jazz I could get into. Super chill future bass you can find. I guess it's a question of what I can get that's royalty free, but maybe if we can find a bunch of cool royalty free jazz or future bass Shiva, we could make that happen as well. Last time, like I said, we started from scratch, but there were a few things that I had kind of prepared going in, and I'm not going to go over them as in-depth as I did the first time. You could watch I'm sure the VODs are up on Twitch if you want to watch what we talked about last week in terms of what I was describing as the core philosophy, but I want to go over that, I think, at the beginning of every DnDTime World, just to remind everyone and get everyone on the same page. Oh, hello! Hello, Mr. Plunderloot. It's good to see you tonight. Well, hope everyone is doing well, having all kinds of fun at work. Oh, man, I'm sorry you're stuck at work, but I'm glad that you were able to stop by and say hello, at least. So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about what some of our core philosophies are. We want to make a world that tells a story. We're building a world that's meant to be played in someday, so we're building a world that is designed to play D&D in. We want our world to be relatively serious, so I've written serious-ish here. we want to shy away from just memes for meme's sake, just putting in goofy stuff just because it's funny, which is fine. If we're building stuff that's silly and goofy, that's also very cool. We just don't want to do that straight ahead and design everything like that, because then we'll just make a world that ends up looking a lot like Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime World, which is all goofs as it is. On a similar vibe to worlds that end up being a lot like Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime World, don't build in a vacuum. When we build things, we want to think about how they fit into the overarching space that we've already designed, unlike Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime, for example, where we just decide where things are and just kind of throw them on the map, just sort of like throwing spaghetti at a wall, darts at a dartboard. Not a lot of rhyme or reason or interconnectivity to the choices. And here we have... Psychopath says only the chaotic neutral gods are allowed to do trolls and memes. Perhaps that is the case. And then Fox in a Box asks, how about a world government? Absolutely. We established, I think, a couple of governments last time. And then, yeah, we're definitely going to go over and talk about some of the stuff that we've already established about our wonderful world. And among the things that we've already established about our world are, well, not established, but we've begun to establish at least what our world's name is. And it'll make it... Oh, actually, I'm sorry, there's one more piece of core philosophy that I wanted to add here. And this is one that was not there last week, but this is a thing I was thinking about that I also think is as important as those other three. So this will be the last one I ever add. I didn't want us to get too bogged down with like rules and thoughts on how to build, and just focus on some important ones. But that is the little things. And I wrote here, while the grandiose world-building concepts are important, we cannot neglect the smaller details and how these big things will affect the everyday lives and the way people interact in the world. Allow me to a brief moment to give an example of what I mean by this. In some past world building I've done, I've made this dwarven kingdom, and it had this really cool and gigantic lore, where there was this huge forge, and there's this ancient smith that was the only one that was able to use it, and now only the grand smith of the dwarven kingdom was able to use it, and it was this massive forge where you had to put your hands inside of these gauntlets, and then control essentially larger automaton hands to work in the flames. And it was a thing that I thought was really cool, but that's really grand lore, and that's really big. But then when thinking about what it means for this culture and for this society to have this thing, this was the most coveted job. So now all of the dwarves in this world always shake hands with their left hand, because in order to work this forge, it was the left hand that needed to do all the fine control and the smithing, because this ancient dwarf was left-handed. So now that's a thing that is reverberated throughout that culture. And that's what I mean by the little things. Thinking about just the small ways that define interaction that I think are overlooked in a lot of world-building aspects. So there's been some stuff in chat since then. Luminarion says, what level is a meeting with a god to be expected by the players? I don't know if it was mentioned. I don't know. I think that would depend on, and that's a point that I don't think we want to do here, is actually build this into a campaign, like a module, and describe how one would run an adventure on this. We want to give you all of the fertile ground on which any one of you could then run an adventure in this place, because you know where all the pieces are, and you know what everyone's doing, and you have all of this infrastructure. But then you can decide, maybe they find out super early or super late. Shiba says super late, and then or they don't even find out about the gods game until level 5. Both of those things could be cool. Maybe if they know about it from the beginning, and that's how you want to run it if you eventually run in this world. Or maybe they find out about it, maybe that's like the dramatic reveal at the finale of the game, when you go for this strange kind of psychological twist where they realize all of a sudden that all of the things they've doing, all of the things that they've been accomplishing have just been so meaningless to the people that they were doing them for. So both of those could be very cool. And Psychopath says, it's like an open world RPG. It is up to the players. Absolutely. That is a perfect description of it, Psychopath. So, yeah. One of the things that we did last week, and this is a thing I want to do for a few weeks until we really start to get going and really start developing a lot of the thick of the world. Maybe 4 maybe 4 weeks of this, I want to have us work on names. And some of those names we got last week were Adruvar, Osirum, Pathorum, Niskrad, and Godrisk. Which Godrisk was a funny one considering the considering the nature of it. So let's I've created a straw poll so that y'all can vote on which name that you like the most out of last week's name. And also, if you have ideas for a name for this world, please just post it in chat, and we will start just collecting more names this week, and we'll do another vote on the best name from this week next week. But these are the names from last week that people submitted for just and Fox's names. Yes, just the name of the world, what we're actually going to call it. For example, Faerun would be the name of the world in the Forgotten Realms. Good evening, Liette. It's good to see you around. Welcome to DnDTime Worlds. We're only on our second week. Yes, quick synopsis. Basically, we're just building a homebrew world together, and we're slowly, we started it the Tuesday before last, and we're going to be doing it every other Tuesday for a while. And let me link you this straw poll, so y'all can vote on what name you want to go with. And, I will tally this at the end, but once one of you has voted, I'm just going to check it to make sure that the voting's working. So let me know once one of you has voted. Oh, we got one. All right, cool. And we'll come back at the end to see which name has been deemed victorious. And again, a reminder, if you have ideas for names, just throughout the show, just throw them at me, and we'll get them up on there, and then we'll do a whole nother vote next week, and then we'll pit all of the winners against each other to finally determine what we call it. The battle royale, so to speak. Alright, so, moving on. Last week we decided on a few axioms that kind of defined how things that had to be true about our world, just some baseline assumptions, and these assumptions that we landed on were that magic exists and it can be wielded by individuals, that the gods are real and that they bestow divine power on certain individuals. This just allows the play of certain races and classes which kind of hinge on these ideas, and that the world has civilized and uncivilized areas for specifically rangers and druids and classes that interact with nature. And Fox says, what about Dios for the world name? Absolutely. I'll put it down for Dios. I like it. And then that there is an infrastructure in place that is allowed for the creation of magic items. There are magic items in this world because... Oh, I bumped my mic. Gotta be careful of that. Because there has to be magic items in a world for D&D because the game assumes that they exist. And there was actually another axiom here last week that I had originally put, which was that the world is part of the planar system as it is outlined in the Dungeon Master's Guide. But we actually decided against that, and we think that this world is going to be isolated in its own sort of little bubble world, which I want to talk a little bit more about today at some point, because I don't know if any of y'all have had a lot of ideas about the directions one could go in this world over this week, but I absolutely have had a ton of them. Luminarion, absolutely you can submit another name. Try to keep it, I think, as a rule, don't do like a ton of them per week, but like one a week is absolutely fine. Excuse me. So, and Sword, I missed you. Welcome tonight, Sword. So moving on. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that we've established last week or the week before last, but the last time we did this show, episode 1. The core concept is Ohio a recommendation for the name of the world? If it's not, I'm putting it down as one anyway, but... So, the core concept of the world that we decided on, and I've taken the whole section about core concepts because we... okay. And I've taken down the section about core concepts because we decided on one. And the themes that we really wanted to play around with were themes of war, themes of religion, and themes of rebellion. So what we wanted our world to be was a world where these various factions and kingdoms are at war, each one representing a god, and that these gods were fueling this war and forcing it onwards. And then there was also this kind of subplot of there being a rebellion that is rebelling against the gods and trying to kill the gods because they see what this war is doing to the world and the people and how it's dividing them. But we ended up on a very, I think, a really cool idea, which is that to the gods, they created this world to play it like a board game. All of the events of this world are in some way directly influenced by the gods, who manipulate and control the mortals of this realm into acting in ways that are to their benefit. And they sort of bicker and they fight and they laugh amongst each other, and they're just all having fun playing this game, much like chess or like the board game Risk, in order to just for their own amusement. There's not really even a point to it. And eventually when they win, when one god has complete control of the world, or in some other ways has achieved victory in this game, then they just will wipe the board. It will just be an apocalypse, and the world will start over as they play a new game. So there was a bunch of stuff being said. A segment says, like chess. Yeah, absolutely. So the gods treat the world very much like it's chess. Do we want 3 factions composed of these different elements? And Bonacci says, there's 9 factions. Yeah, at the moment we have 9 factions where we're kind of doing it by alignment. Wyvern Soul says the cloud. Also, welcome, Wyvern Soul. Says the cloud is greater than the conch. I take no sides in that debate. Foxbox says like a theocracy and an autocracy. So, yeah, for sure. I actually really like the idea of there being us establishing. Well, I think for the most part they are. I guess for the most part they are kind of theocracies, but deciding the exact nature on some of these things would be pretty rad. Like figuring out what all of these different groups are, how they operate, things like that. And Bionic Sheba says, yep. And then Crusaders, Jeremy would be Rebellion, I suppose. Jeremy, I think we actually have already put in the world, and he is a small gatekeeper in a little town that was a character that was one of the oracles of these gods, because every great game has to have rules. So these are the rules that the gods operate by in order to kind of play this game and run this. And I took a lot of the things that we talked about last time and have kind of condensed them down into this document and neaten them up to a degree. And if you want to look at this document, there is a link to it on the Discord, so you can be looking directly at the document while we're editing on it. I did turn off the ability to comment on it just for the duration of the stream, but I will turn that back on once the stream is over. And Wyvern Soul says, these gods sound like assholes. This is why people kill gods. Yes, these gods are definitely assholes. I think even the good ones are assholes in this case, and that is decidedly why people kill gods. Fox in the Box, what's left to make then? There is a ton of stuff left to make. For one thing, we don't have like any of the we have like 3 or 4 gods that are fleshed out. We have to flesh out so many gods. None of the terrain. We haven't established what races, the individual details on what any of the kingdoms are like. We have so much stuff that we can touch on today. And if y'all have a direction that you really want to focus and something you'd really like to do today, then let me know what that is. And then, so yes, I was going to say, these are some of the rules that we established last time. And if you have also, these rules aren't set in stone, we are going to kind of do these as, Fosto dibs this forest gnomes. We can edit these if you like them or dislike them. We can, move around with these, add additional ones. But these are basically what the gods have agreed upon at the start of this game. First, rule number 1 is essentially don't talk about Fight Club. The gods are not allowed to speak about the game or its rules to a mortal. The second one is that there is no mortal can be directly controlled. There's no domination magic that gods are allowed to cast on individuals in order to make them act. Free will is absolute. Number 3, you can only communicate with the mortal realm directly via an oracle, which is a chosen mortal that gods speak with telepathically. And these are the people that end up becoming leaders in these various factions. We have, I think, established, we made up one oracle last week, which was the character that Jeremy was, and he was a pretty goofy one. I really liked it. And you can only have 3 oracles, and the oracle has to stay that way until they die. And you cannot, steal another god's oracle. And then the other thing is sort of the win condition of the game, which is to control numbers of territories. And that's kind of something that right now is kind of vague, I think intentionally vague, but gods can use their territories is sort of like how much power they're able to exert over the realm and give to their followers is based on how many followers they have. You control a territory if the majority of the people in that territory consider you their god and worship you. And so the more the god is worshipped, the more they can exert power, and it kind of snowballs, and then eventually that's how one wins, is by having all of the territory, by having the majority of the people in all regions of the world worship one god. Or vice versa, removing all of the worshippers of other gods from other areas and taking away their territories. So, let us see. Luminarian has another name submission. We have Kreldor. I shall put it under the name. I gotta paste without formatting. We're gonna be doing that a lot today. Gotta learn that hotkey. Paste without formatting. Oh, I guess that is paste without formatting. Oh well. What? Guys, I'm sorry about my horrible Google Docsmanship. There we go. There we go. Very good. So these were the basic rules. There's a few things. Sheba says 25 years and the game was a draw and the board is completely wiped. I think we had picked like 5,000 as that, but so she was saying this is like 4,900. I see above, I missed your previous comment. So yeah, it's about year 5,000. So the game is coming to an end no matter what. So this is the time when your campaign would be starting that big plays are going to start happening throughout the world, but you could also just choose to do it earlier, I suppose. Let's continue to read what people have been saying here. Foxbox says you need to know history to get how things would have interacted. Yeah, absolutely. Timeline is a big one that we've barely even scratched the surface of. Max Mikester. Oh, I haven't seen you yet, Max, but welcome tonight. What if you murder an oracle? Well, then I guess that god would have to find another one. And maybe that's a great way to throw off a god's influences by murdering their oracles, and then they'll have to, build up new people in society with new reputations. Or maybe a god murders their own oracle and has them killed or done in some way or another, so that they can pick a new, more powerful one because they decided that they don't want that one anymore. Fox and Box says, reminds me of No Game, No Life. Yeah, I can see it a little bit. Yeah, for sure. Definitely like the chess-like aspect of it. I know that was a big thing in that anime, which is a great anime for anyone who's an anime fan. What about Wyvern Soul? What about rules of divine artifacts? Divine artifacts. We've, I think, made one of them, and I think those are also, if we want to establish rules, then we can throw that in for divine artifacts if, like, maybe there's a certain limit to how many gods can make and bestow upon their people, which I imagine it would make sense that there is, then we can do that. Sheba, it being near the end is just to put pressure on the rebellion to do something about the game before it ends. Okay, yeah. Agreed. Oh yes, Psychopath Lux has a bit of history. He was winning with kindness and love. And now we've decided, that was one of the things we decided last week, was that Lux was a god that was in last place at the moment, but he was the lawful good god. But has never killed anyone by choice. Most likely he just wants his light to reign. And then she was, yeah, but Lux got cheated. So yeah, these are some of the history. So without further ado, let's get into the actual thick of it. So, as we said last time, we started really fleshing out this Pantheon, and we really focused on the gods, and I think we want to take a little bit of time today to start Nice. Max Meixer says, I have a name, Luminaria. I like it. I will put it on the name list. There we go. And boop, 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 boop. So last week we started working on our Pantheon, and we came up with all these sort of gods, and we didn't, for one thing, there's a lot of gods that we started out, but we didn't really flesh them too much. The ones that have seen really a lot of context for, that we've talked about a lot, are these gods. And I will... so 9 kingdoms, and please repost the poll to the naming poll. Yeah, no problem. I can do this. Boop, boop, boop. So 9 kingdoms based off of the 9 gods. Yes, and I don't think they necessarily even have to be 9 kingdoms. I think one of the things we were talking about is that each god kind of had their own style of play. One of the interesting ones that I think it was actually Jeremy that submitted, oh, Wyvern says it's not showing up. I will tell you what, I will post it on the screen where we're working right now, and then you can write it in directly, because I'm not sure why it would not be showing up. But we shall post that link here. And so you can copy it there. I'll make it a little bit bigger, so make sure everyone can see it. Oop. Doop. Incorrect. There we go. Yeah, it's weird. It seems like it's showing up for some people, but not for others. I don't know why it does that. We've had problems with that in the past, but it's just a weird thing that comes along, I guess, with posting links in Twitch chat. We'll have to get that figured out. So these were some of the gods we came up with last time. Cherish, for example. Yes, it must have been Discord, Lord of Chaos. Or you're saying post it on the Discord. Yeah, we can also do that. It is in Hangout. Oh, you already got there, Shiva. You beat me. Very good. So Foxmux says, let's finish the gods. My thoughts exactly. Let's finish the gods and really figure out who these people are. One of the main things that I really liked that we were doing last week with the gods is we were giving them very human personalities, and that feels right for this game, because we don't want our gods to be these absolute divine beings. They're gods that are playing a game. They're inherently a little bit mean to begin with, just in the nature that they're just going to throw this whole world away when it's done. So we want them to have that kind of Greek god, very flawed individuals just with extreme power. Let's talk about some of the gods we came up with last week. And there's some of these that I think we are a little bit married to, and some that I would say that we are not, because we didn't really build anything out of them. But we have Cherish, and Cherish is one that we actually talked about a lot. And Cherish would be a god of love and of lust, and also of greed, who was of a neutral alignment, who is currently... we had kind of talked about in different play styles. Cherish is turtling, so to speak, in card game terms. Cherish is Cherish is trying to go for the culture victory, as it says there, slowly gathering resources, and over time intends to win in some grand sweep, very much like an Exodia player. So that's our neutral alignment, and I think last week we were talking about teams of gods and a whole bunch of them. I think we really want to boil it down to just one god per alignment. Another one, and I think this is our god that's most fleshed out, is Lux, the lawful good god of life. And Lux is just sort of this handsome, blonde hair, blue eyes, 40-year-old man is the appearance that he takes, values life, dislikes beings who destroy life, and he was in first place, but slowly over time his kingdom has, his territories and kingdoms have dwindled down to one, which is in a kingdom that we talked about a little bit called Visanya, which we can go back over and again if you're interested in looking over this sheet while we're talking about it. I'm also just going to post that link here, and if that link doesn't go through for you, then I don't know what to tell you. But that way you can look at all of the stuff on this document as we're kind of going through. Can the lawful evil god be drow-like? Absolutely. We don't really have much about our lawful evil god right now. All we have is that their name is Tizel, and that they are a god of war. And I think because we don't have a ton right now about that god, that means we can kind of go through and like, you know, change some things about them. I think we can kind of really boil down on what this god of war is. So I'm definitely down with calling this god drow-like. And by drow-like, I assume that you mean that they are, you know, this sort of, even if not matriarchal, they embody those personalities in a lot of places. And they are these very, very scheming, a very hierarchical society. And so this god is like the drow. And so they likely have kingdoms that are representative of that. But let's talk a little bit about the personality of this god. What is this god's like? So as if we're making Tizel very drow-like, we can talk about very focused. I imagine that they have a very and Machiavellian for sure. Sheba says Palin should be the lawful neutral god. Yeah, I can put that down for Palin. Oh, I put an extra N, Machiavellian. Plan-oriented. Yep, I imagine that that's also the case. Exacting a very slow and deliberate plan over the course of the entirety of this game, which is about 4,000 years now. And hates it when it falls apart. Bionic Shiva, I love that about Palin, is the rules lawyer. Palin is the one that's keeping everyone in line. Making sure the rules are followed. Excellent. And she's sitting on the edge of unhinged. Yeah, I'm into that, for sure. And also, edge of unhinged. Cool. And we also have, so right now, what alignments do we kind of really have? We have chaotic neutral. We have a couple of chaotic neutral gods. We have Tramlin, who was this god of revelry and madness, and then Vosto, who is this small boy god, who is sort of just this, like, you know, temperamental, childish figure. I like both of those, but the one that we have a lot more about right now would be Vosto. So I think we maybe move Tramlin as this person of revelry and madness, and we move them into our people section, because I think we have a good chaotic neutral god in the form of Vosto. And I can see that Tramlin being an oracle, or something along those lines, that would really appeal to that childlike vibe that this Vosto god has. So let's do that. So I'm going to move over into people and just I'm just going to toss a Tramlin right in there. Boop. Revelry and madness. Agent of Vosto. Very good. So let's eliminate that god there. And we'll delete that row. So we have neutral, we have chaotic neutral, and we have lawful neutral, it looks like, in the form of Palin. For good, we have lawful good, and then we have chaotic good in the form of Zethlien, who is this goddess of time that uses, you know, control over time in order to manipulate and sort of win the game through that way. Vosto has the temperament and appearance of an 8-year-old boy. He likes to make people entertain him, and he has black eyes and hair that closely resembles Stratus. I can toss that in. For sure. He has... Oop, get that eventually. Paste without the formatting. He has black hair and eyes that resemble that of a Shatterkai. And another thing about this is I'm gonna try and get lots of today. I think, and the goal on the whole for doing DnDTime Worlds is that we're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and then over the week, through suggestions and kind of working on this document together, we'll refine it more and more. And we had some. I had some awesome stuff that people sent in. I know Luminarion put a bunch of stuff in about Zaith, the chaotic good god, which I thought was very cool over the course of last couple weeks. And I hope we see more of that as we move on, because I think that's going to be the best way to really refine a lot of these details, is to do them when off stream and do the big picture stuff together. What about dragons having an important role in the world? Leah, absolutely, I'm into that. What do you have in mind for an important role? Maybe they are, maybe there is an important dragon that is sort of the leader of one particular faction, and we can, right now, actually, we had talked about, if we're talking about factions, and so we have Palin now as lawful neutral. So let's fill in some of these gods that we have really kind of locked down for particular alignments. We have Vosto there, and we have, let us go back to the Pantheon here. We have Tizel was our lawful evil god of war. Tizel is our lawful evil god. Right now, we had Tizel as being associated with dragons to some degree. Fox and Box says dragons are aligned. I don't know if that's, I mean, that's traditionally true, but this is our world. We can do whatever we want. We can make the dragons all of one alignment if we so choose to do that. We could just say, like, for example, red dragons in Forgotten Realms are, of course, chaotic evil, but we could decide that they are lawful evil, that they are agents of Tizel in this world. I think we're talking about dragons being summoned as like special tokens. Yeah, I think that's a cool idea. I also like the idea that there could just be dragons. Psychopath, can we bring back the gem dragons from 3.5? I don't know anything about those, but perhaps. So, in terms, Leetta, of dragons having an important role in the world, let's maybe decide on what that role is. What are the dragons in this world? I think, for one thing, it'd be cool to just have the dragons in this world be monstrous, to be evil. And, maybe we later up decide that that's not right, but I think Tizel doing stuff with dragons could be pretty rad. And we talked originally about lawful evil doing stuff with big hordes and hobgoblins and goblins and orcs. And yeah, I think that that's something that we can also work into that. This kind of, and it also works into the lawful nature, I think, that we were talking about, where they have these long-term plans. They've been slowly amassing armies. They're winning in a very traditional, if not brutal way. Each having their own legendary units. I like it a lot. What do you think? We have some kind of ideas here for what their legendary units are. For example, we're talking about lawful neutral having automatons. I think Zaith's legendary unit is probably, since they control time, is probably some type of just time thing. I don't think it even necessarily needs to be an established monster. But I love the idea of, for example, Palin just having this giant robot, like the Marut, like the inevitables of the Modron alignment. So I'm going to actually put under the rules here, and we're just going to put this as rule 11. Or actually, we're going to put this as rule 7B. Whoop. Undo. I'm going to go that way. Or 7A, I suppose. So each god has a legendary unit they can summon if they have enough influence. And we can decide what those are for each one as it makes sense. But let's talk a little bit more about the Pantheon again. So we have our neutral god, we have Cherish, we have Vosto as our chaotic neutral. We do not have a neutral evil god, but right here we have Philagios, a god, an evil god of deceit and subterfuge. when Luminarian says, when I was making Tizel, I imagined being similar to the iconic bad guy Satan. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty rad. I think we're talking now more of like a sort of like a feminine Tizel, but I am very into this like sort of devilish, this devilish lawful evil entity. And since we're not really in the planar system, and this was another world building thing that I wanted to actually just run by people. And I'm sorry I'm having trouble keeping up with chat. There's just so much going on. I'm sure there's awesome ideas that I'm missing, so post them again if we need them. Oh, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Okay, so this was a world building idea I had, where we talked last time also about this place called the Evervale, and the Evervale is the Evervale is an interesting location that we didn't really decide anything about. We just knew it was cool and we wanted to do something with it, and it would be sort of how to ascend to the gods' realm, and this would be maybe a way for eventually mortals to reach the gods and then kill them. My thoughts on the Evervale, that it was sort of the veil, it was the boundaries of the plane that these gods have created to play this game, and they are essentially locked in a very small in a very small plane, and the various gods, they use their they use their power to keep all of the mortals of this realm in this one place, not being aware of the greater picture outside of it, not being aware of other gods, not being aware of things like the Nine Hells, not being aware of Mount Celestia and all of these, the real prime material plane, which I think gives us a cool way of, it's difficult to get to this location, but outside factions could potentially move into it and say, if you want to play like a Fey Warlock, well, there's not technically a Feywild in this world because it's isolated, but maybe there's been a way for some Fey entity who's interested in and trying to manipulate this world and take what it has to offer because they know these gods are playing this crazy game here and they want to steal some of the magic for themselves. This could also be a great way to, you know, introducing these outside characters that are observers, could be that aren't really bound by the gods' rules, could be a great way to work the rebellion into it. They know about the game and they don't have any qualms about telling people about it. So let me know what you think about that, because that was my thought on what the Evervale could be. It could be just, this is, if you try to leave the plane, you end up in the Evervale, and it is the only other sort of plane in this world. But we can, if you like that, we can talk about that later. And then, hello, I see Matthias the Enchanter is here. I see we have Ninbins, which is a name I do not recognize, but welcome tonight, Ninbins. And you say, I think the extraplanar beings would love to buy into the game. I think so, for sure. And I imagine these gods are pretty exclusive about their clubs, and that these extraplanar beings, you know, are sneaking in now, getting a look at things, figuring out maybe how best, you know, learning about the gods through observing their game, maybe figuring out how to get in. Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea, Nimbins. So, we're again moving through Pantheon. Neutral, chaotic neutral. We have lawful neutral, and we have true neutral. So our neutrals are taken care of. We need our neutral evil, and we need our neutral good, and we need our chaotic evil, is what we're missing right now. So we already have, I think, too many chaotic neutrals. I think I'm going to cut this chaotic neutral because we didn't establish anything other than illusion and mischief. Actually, you know what? I don't want to just chop an idea. We'll move him over to people like I did with Tramlin. Insert row below, and boop. Illusion, Agent of Vosto. Awesome. So that's another god we got out of here. So we can cut this one. What about 2 or 3 gods that aren't actually playing the game? I think that we can absolutely establish some gods that aren't playing the game, but for now, I think we want to stay away from some of those, just because we want to really focus on these ones, and I think those would be like a cool extra addition, like afterwards, and these gods that are, because I can imagine, Liet, these gods that are like judging the regular gods for the way that they're acting and the way they're just toying with lives like this. Luminarian? What about two gods already resigned? We could maybe go in a direction like that, but then there's no point in establishing them if they're already out in the game. It would just be like a historical thing. We've already got like some cool gods, so I don't want to like sacrifice the gods we already have. But maybe I think like if you're running this campaign, having like seeing a god defeated at the start of it would be rad, like a rad way to start out the campaign. And also just thinking about how that would impact the world and things like that. Oh, Opal Dragon's here. Welcome, Opal. So we right now have, for our neutral evil god, we have, Helda doesn't have an alignment. Sounds like Helda would work for Lux, but I'm just going to cut that one because that's a very, I think, also in a similar, like, place as Lux with the light. Alright, so we have two. We have, for Chaotic Evil, we have Corrosia, a god of death and decay that we have not established at all. What do we think that is? And then also we have Philagios, which was a god of deceit and subterfuge. Maybe the neutral evil god, maybe this is the big cheater. We've talked a lot about a god that cheats, but maybe Philagios is the pinnacle offender of cheaters. So I like that. How do you think one cheats at this game? Obviously, like, since we've established these rules, they can't dominate. How would a god go about dominating and cheating without people noticing? Yeah, I like that too. So maybe that's the rule that he really tries to flaunt, is domination. Tries to flaunt the domination rule. Maybe this god abuses the oracle system by just killing off oracles and making new ones all over the place. Or maybe that's more of a chaotic evil thing, because that sounds like something a chaotic evil god would do, is just random natural disasters in other territories. I'm going to put that under factions, and I'm going to put that under Philagios, but I like the direction we're starting to take this new guy. So that's going to be our neutral evil. Philagios. Yeah, he's doing things like natural disasters, earthquakes under enemy kingdoms. Fox, I feel like Chaotic Evil isn't playing to win, but to mess with other strategies, a bit like a troll. Yeah, I can see that. And that's something that Vasto does a little bit too. Is that kind of, disruption, doesn't really care about winning, is just trying to have fun for himself. I think that also works for Chaotic Neutral too. So Philagios, natural disasters. And we talked about Chaotic Evil being a cheater, but I think having more than one god that's trying to cheat, and I think the big rule that this guy's flaunting is the domination rule. And maybe he's essentially, maybe the Philagios' followers are so rigid in their following of him, he's essentially dominating them. They're just allowing him to dominate them without him actually having any effort, and he sort of pilots them like one would pilot, like one would pilot, a mech in an anime, and then uses their power to dominate other people and like turns things against them. I really like that idea. Corrosia could be the god who rules hell, sits on a throne of skeletons in a pit of lava, despises everything, tricks people. Corrosia outright tries to ruin the game while making others break the rules, maybe. Yeah, just doing things that just makes the game unfun. I really like that idea, just trying to ruin the game. We're gonna go back to Corrosia for that one. Go back to the Pantheon. Trying to ruin... I feel like this is the first time they invited Corrosia to play at the table, and they didn't know that Corrosia was such an asshole, and now they really regret inviting Corrosia to the game, and next time they're not allowed back. Alright. First time invited. Not going to get invited back. Opal Dragon, also the debt collector. I like the idea of that being in... I like that idea of being even an aspect of either Tizel or the neutral evil Philagios. I'm gonna put that under Pelagios right now because we really haven't found too much of an identity for him. So maybe this idea of him being a heavily economic based economy is also interesting there. Yeah, maybe they all corrosion money or souls. Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is that Corosia's... No one likes playing with Corosia. Yeah, so... we need a neutral good god. We have... Onarias. We also have Foxfire. What do you guys think for a neutral god name? I'm gonna put down tentatively... It sounds like Fox does not want Foxfire to be a name. So I'm gonna put down tentatively Onarias as our neutral good god. And a thing that we talked about for neutral good, since we didn't have Ninbins. Maybe the neutral good god will be the guy who plays the slow game by placing pieces in locations of underappreciated advantage, like the dwarves in the mountain. That's a thing that we've already assigned to neutral. Like, your brain is in the exact same... is in the exact same place as ours was. We put that one on neutral. Shouldn't time be more neutral? I mean, maybe. We don't want to go back. I don't think we want to spend too much time going back over some of those old gods. I think, but definitely a nature god is a cool idea for this, because that's not an aspect that we've touched on at all yet. And you know, I imagine the avatar is like, you know, what's like a big sort of nature elemental, like, you know, leviathans, tarasques, things like that. Like, you know, just nature's absolute wrath. Would be how they, you know, destroy things, but also just things like, you know, caps lock, treants and druids and elves and all that sort of stuff are all, you know, just chilling. Sort of your green deck. Fluffy is a nature person. Fluffy could be a god. Fluffy could be a god. Two sides, like fury and nature. I mean, you know, I think all of these gods are imperfect. Maybe temper is this god's problem. And Oniara is gods of the winds, says Liet. Yeah, I like that a lot. God of winds. Time is neutral until someone fucks with it. That's pretty good. Alright, cool. God of winds. Wrath. At times. So yeah, Onarias is the one that gets really mad when something bad happens, and they just take a tantrum and flip the board on occasion, which I like that. Even though they're, you know, generally a good person, they got a little bit of a temper in them. I like that fault. I don't know if the winds necessarily has to mean fickle. I think in this case the winds is maybe maelstroms are the way that they meant their anger manifests in the material plane. Opal Dragon 98. I don't know if I've seen you yet, Opal Dragon, but if I haven't, I'll say, if I already have, I'll say hello again. Welcome. I'm just gonna copy and paste what you said. Pelagios could look like a finely dressed man from the Elizabethan area, or even wearing a modern tux. I like it. And now he's definitely kind of cemented himself in this very deceptive, you know, using people against each other. Yeah, I think that's a very cool place. And now I think that's a very firm direction to take neutral evil. They are the economic power. They are the ones that are, like, the real manipulator faction. Trying to win, perhaps not even through war, but through, you know, just eventually taking a very slow economic control over the world until everyone is forced to bend to their will. I think that's a cool play style. We got Cherish, who's and like Ninbins was talking before, we got Cherish, who's doing like the culture victory thing, where they are, you know, placing key things in undervalued places, slowly trying to build their Exodia combo. Tizel, blue-skinned man or woman sitting on a draconian throne. Perfect. Copy pasta. Copy pasta. And that's how I'm going to get a lot of this stuff, is just if you have ideas for stuff, just like write it like write it in chat, and I will copy and paste it into the document, because that's the quickest way for me to get stuff in here. A luminary and god of the sea too? Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. When Owner is cool, you feel a small breeze, but when she breaks, she accidentally creates a monsoon. And I think that plays into the wrath nicely. And okay, so we got our 9 gods now. This is fairly complete. So let's assign every god. So neutral good, we now have the name is gonna be a tough one to remember. Onarias. Neutral, we got cherish. And for chaotic evil was Karoshia. Alright. So this is, I think, a great place to talk about. This is a great place to kind of leave our gods and I think our factions for a little while, because we've had a ton of ideas, and I think from this point, really shoring up the gods, their appearances, their domains, what they do. I think that's something that we're going to want to do over the weeks and kind of online and off the stream. So I think we want to start working on some other very big world building aspects. And something we have not touched at all on is what the world actually looks like. What are the natural geographical formations of our world? So I want to get a major shift, and this is something that we haven't even talked about. So y'all, let's really get in there and start working on this whole new aspect. So what do you think? Liet says dragons. We'll get dragons. We'll get dragons in the mix. Before the day is over, we'll make at least one rad dragon. That's a thing we did last week, and I think a thing we're going to do every week is just fill out a couple of proper nouns every week. Just make some random important dragon. Make some. Well, yeah, I guess that's what we'll do this week. So we got a few. Super snowy, Ice Age. I don't know if we want to make the whole thing super snowy, but things that we want, super snowy. And actually, you know what? We're going to insert row below. Snowy. Ice Age. And in terms of grand scheme stuff, this world can be pretty crazy. According to Fox says once a pretty wild world. I agree, and I think the reason this is the terrain of this world and the context of things. This is a game board. The world does not have to obey the normal rules that one would make for a world. The rivers can flow uphill. You can throw, for example, and I think this is even potentially a sign of. Like, this is like foreshadowing, I think, in the terrain that the world is actually a board game, because you could put, for example, a desert right next to a swamp, this incredible wetland right next to this arid, dry nothing, and that would show, like, just make the geography make no sense, and there are people that study it and question it and just cannot figure out how this could possibly be. And so in that regard, I think there's definitely a lot of like crazy stuff that we can do with this. So I'm just going to go through and start taking some of these ideas. Max Meixer, beaches and tropical stuff, for sure. Insert row below. Beaches, tropical stuff, for sure. And I think I wrote torpical. What's a torpical stuff? Tropical stuff, insert row below. Insert row below. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I see Luminary says I left out super. So we're gonna go with super snowy. Triplet of active volcanoes. Yeah, that's the stuff right there. Triplet of active volcanoes. And what's that called? If you have things, also name these places. And we'll just have names for stuff, and then we can start talking about what it is. Crags and mountains and steppes and crazy raging seas. Highly elevated stuff. Oh, undo. Control Z. Insert row below. So highly elevated stuff. So overarching. Let's talk, and I think that could be just a cool terrain. Lots of changes in elevation, and I think that makes a lot of sense for this world. If elevation is constantly changing, and there are big giant plateaus and mountains all over the place, the gods put those there because they wanted there to be like dynamic combat from their perspective. They didn't want it to just like slog it out on these boring ass plains. They did that the first time they ran this game. This isn't these gods' first rodeo on this game, so this time they're trying to spice it up by making all of these like really tall crags so you can get, you know, the high ground. There are gods that are always trying to get the high ground. I think that's very cool. Desert in the Middle Eastern zone. Desert, for sure. In the Eastern zone. Why not? Floating rapids. Ooh. I like that. Floating rapids. Insert row below. I wish there was a hotkey for that. Floating rapids. They do loop-de-loops in the air. Gravity makes no sense. Yeah, I think on the whole, just because you're going to run a campaign in this, having the gravity make no sense everywhere would just be a lot to deal with, but I think having like there be places where the gravity is distorted, or maybe it's only distorted for certain things, like for example the river floats but people don't float, like they're still affected normally by gravity in that river. I think that could be very cool. Have all terrains have super hard lines on them. There are natural lines. And I think that this idea of the terrain having hard lines, like, these are the denotations, and I think it's very clear that you're, so they don't blend into each other. Like, it's clearly a desert, and this is clearly a snowstorm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, too. Step out of a storm and into a blizzard, says Fox. Yeah, same page there. We could also denote that in some way once we have these territories figured out, and I think we want, like, a bunch of these, like, strange biomes. I think that once we've done this, we can, that will be like the rules, and how many of those you control will be your power, and whether or not you're able to summon, say, a dragon as a god. Name would be the Crad Woodlands. Yep, we're just in there. It's just in there. Crad Woodlands. Insert row below. A big pit. Done. Just make up all the biomes and hex grid the world. Yeah, I think that's basically what's going to be. It's just going to be like a big hex grid. And they don't make it too perfectly hexy, because, like, they don't want people to get overly suspicious. Like, when everything's a perfect hex, that starts to get a little bit funky. I think people question things a bit more. They want it to at least seem a little bit real, if ridiculous, you know? Do you want the world to be flat? That's a big question that I would like a lot of people's input on. Do we want to make the world flat? Like, is there just an end of the world, so to speak? Maybe the end of the world is the Evervale. We've talked about this Evervale being just basically the border where you can't cross through. Maybe it's just these swirling mists that no one returns from. How do you guys feel about that? I think that could be a cool idea. Ninbins. Trees the size of towers, harder than steel. Absolutely. Is that for the Crad Woodlands? I think I don't know if it is for the Crad Woodlands, but I think that's what the Crad Woodlands are. Oh, wait. Yep, right here. Paste without formatting. I love that. Yeah, just these massive things. And some people, and I imagine that's where, like, Neutral Good has a lot of territory in these Crad Woodlands, and these are, like, their outer defensive fortifications that they've chosen to build in. Psychopath says, has a lot of ideas for the Crad Woodlands. I will post it in the thing as well. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna make a new one, and I'm gonna just keep your trees, because I think it's a much different vibe than the trees. And we'll copy the Crad Woodlands, Control X, Control V, and we'll call this a cool place until we come up with a name for it. Bionic Shiva says the edge of the world leads to an endless wooden plane that just so happens to be someone's coffee table. I like and don't like it. Like, I love it. I'm putting that... Hold on a second. The first of the day. This is now part of the today's first... where's my color? Our first addition to the XXX meme edition of this world. Ninbins, the Iron Veil. Absolutely. That's it. The Iron Veil. Cityscapes. Yeah, we'll do cityscapes and stuff too. On.us, we can do an undersea realm for sure. Insert roll below. Undersea cityscapes. I just had a night. I want to do one. We're gonna call it the Shelf. And some of the continent extends very far out into the ocean, but with no land underneath it. It's just this huge chunk of land that stretches. And then underneath that, there is just this very dark stretch of ocean. Dark stretch of ocean beneath continental outcroppings filled with titanic fish. Yeah, I like that. I think that could be very cool. I would want to run something there. Dresden Marsh, done. More. These are awesome ideas, guys. Keep them coming. I'm loving these. Dresden Marsh. Copy, insert row, and Control V, and elevated swamp. Paste without formatting. I cannot control. I gotta Control Shift V. Control C, Control V. Done. The moon of Zith. Zaith. That's what it is. Zaith. How would you? So that's opal. Oh, nice. And I think the moon of, unless you have a big idea in mind, I think the moon of Zethlieth is just a massive spherical floating rock. And it's not the moon, but it's just another thing that's been called like a second moon, and it's just this huge thing where perhaps Zaith's capital is. I think that could be very rad. Frozen in time and place. Or 9 moons, one for each god. That's just a lot of work to come up with 9 moons right now, but maybe. That might be a thing over the week. So if you got 9 moon ideas, I think that could be very rad. The pit's walls should be riddled with holes and burrows. Copy pasta, excellent, love it. I think we actually talked about a pit last week. Maybe we didn't talk about a pit. Maybe I'm crazy. Might have been in the relics. I have no idea. Terrain. Heronis Valley, says Liette. I just love this. This is my favorite thing about this show. We had a couple of good chunks like this last week, where it's just that raw creative energy just everywhere. I'm loving these. All right. 2 ranges of mountains that have a depression on the middle, and the walls contain various precious minerals. Maybe that's like a dwarven, and probably a city hanging from those walls. Wink, wink. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's just so much. Pete do a moon with a scary face that wipes the board for the gods. That can be the XXX meme edition. We'll put that in the XXX meme edition for that Wind Waker. For that, what am I saying? Wind Waker. Who am I? I've never even heard of Zelda. For that Majora's Mask reference. What about an area that's just darkness? I love it. And that's somebody's, like, main domain, too. Like, the people in there have... Whoa! I searched Google for a whole bunch of stuff just there. I'm all over the place. Area that's just darkness is rad as hell. Come up with a cool name for it if you want, or I will make one later. An undersea city, self-contained in a bubble, much like a Dyson sphere. For sure. I'm just gonna copy that and just put it straight into that undersea cityscapes. Or actually, that seems more of a place than a region. So we're gonna put that actually just in places. Because that's gonna be very cool, and I don't want to lose it. But I don't know if it's necessarily a region. Back to regions, back to terrain. The Moon of Z. Oh, that's rad as hell. It's rad as hell, Opal Dragon. Moon of Zeeth is a giant clock. And no one realizes it. It's too big, and it just kind of has this pulsing within. But to the people, to the gods, they understand that that's like the game's timer. Or maybe it's not the game's timer. Maybe it's just a part of the terrain. Because I think it'd be weird for their timer to be on the board. But nonetheless, I think it's cool, and I think we can do some stuff with that. Luminarian. The Endless Dark works for me. The Endless Dark. And Psychopath says Creperum for the darkness area. I like the Endless Dark because that sounds like what the people would call that place. Like I can't imagine them coming up with this name for this darkness that was Creperum. I feel like they would just be like, no, that's just the dark. We don't go there. The Unchained Isles, a series of floating isles where the land has ascended, leaving only a dark, uninhabitable sea below. Love it. Row below. Boop. The Unchained Isles. I spelled Isles so bad. Islays. Alright, there we go. No, I just like the Endless Dark for that darkness area. I think that's rad. I don't know. It's just the simplicity of it. It's just... I would even be okay with cutting the endless and just... It's just the dark. Oof. Alright, how many we got so far? Super Snowy Ice Age. So let's go back to some of these, the triplet of active volcanoes. That's got to have a rad name, but I think that's more of a description. Any cool name for a triplet of active volcanoes? Let no moment of creativity be left unloved. Where was it? Creperum. We will call that Creperum. Or actually, maybe that doesn't sound like a triplet of active volcanoes to me. We'll come back to it. We'll find a good place for Creperum. I'm going to put the name here. Insert row below. Creperum. And I think that there's also just like... I think there's like five or so terrains that are just pretty chill. Fields, flowers, deciduous forest. Just like, there's just some chunks of the world that everything is not absolutely popping off all the time. The Fedora... Oh, wait, the Ferota. I thought that was the Fedora Triangle, which would have been a very funny joke, but the Ferota Triangle it is. The Ferota... Magma Trinity. Oh, wait, Magma Trinity or Ferota Triangle? Vote. Magma Trinity or we also have... Oh, nice sword. I see you've memed me with Wana, Haka, and Lugi. But I like the Fedora Triangle a lot. The Quintet of Calm. The Quintet of Calm, and so it shall be. The Calm Quintet. We probably want to name those at some point, but... Magma Trinity. I'm seeing some votes. I liked the Feroda Triangle, but I'm seeing some votes for Magma Trinity. Maybe Magma Trinity is the way to go. Here, I will place in your meme sword. Hold on a second. Control C, Control V. But your meme, as all memes, shall be placed in red. Oh god, every time. Every Tim. Control Shift V. Your meme shall be made red. To show that it is but a meme. Cool. So we got a ton of stuff here. Let's talk about the snowy ice areas. What makes those unique? There is a plane of solid ice that... there's a plane of ice prone to heavy hail that breaks it apart and makes it impassable at times. So yeah, how do you guys feel about that? That's just like a, you know, it's this large Arctic ice field where when these like hailstorms come, it shatters the ice and it makes it impossible to kind of walk on. So sometimes you can move in this region, and so settling an actual colony up there is almost impossible. But it would have like a cool name, I'm sure. Maybe there's a sphere of ice that's so big it has its own weather. Maybe that's what the moon is. Maybe that's what the moon is. Could be made of ice. Could be made of ice. The volcanoes have a fedora-shaped rock that caps a volcano, and when it erupts, it blasts off and lands on another volcano. It's pretty funny. I like that. Colderia. I like it. We shall. So it shall be. Moon is made of clocks. We got clocks on there. Yeah. There's clocks. The moon should be Palin's automaton. Oh, that's pretty crazy. I think either way. Hold on a second, people. Or, you know what, factions. Palin's massive automaton is so large it is its own piece of the terrain, unbeknownst to most. So that way we can figure out what Palin's, but I don't want to lose that idea that Palin's thing is so big that it's just part of the landscape, because I think that's wicked cool. Terrain. Undersea skidyscapes. We'll put that under undersea. I thought I already had a thing that I missed for. Maybe I missed it, but I could have sworn there was an undersea cityscape thing that I missed that I already put there. Oh, nope. Control. Gonna get there eventually. Grassland, flower field. Done. They're all done, Shiva. Everyone is good. And then that pretty chill place where we don't need to constantly fear for our lives. Yeah. And then maybe there's also some kind of medium ones. Since we don't want them all to just be... Because I think it will be... If every single place in the world is crazy. And... You know what? I think that's a perfect place for the quintet. Alewa. It is grassland, flower field, forest, lowlands, and Alewa. And if we have other names for those, I think we can come up with a better name than forest. But one of them can be that. But we want places that aren't necessarily, crazy where, because if everything is absolutely out of control bonkers, then you start to lose appreciation when you come across those. Like when you see 3 giant volcanoes all next to each other, all like erupting like in a cycle, you start, and then like the next thing that you see is a giant floating river in the sky that like swirls and loop-de-loops. You start to lose appreciation for those volcanoes because it's just the next big thing. I think we want some of these to be a little bit sparing. So maybe just, what's a cool name for a plateau? Because I imagine at least one, maybe Lawful Evil, I picture them just perched up on this plateau with their big, you know, dark fortress, or whatever it is that they have. A great plateau near perfectly vertical sides. I imagine that there's like for a lot of the terrain, it's very textbook, and so for the plateau, the sides are just like a perfect smooth vertical shape, because, you know, they didn't want to put too much effort into, you know, the gods into, you know, nicking out every nook and cranny of it. The Mirage Plateau. Done. Oh wait, we had 2 votes. We have a lot of votes for Rindo. Never mind. I have to back up. I'm sorry, Sword. But there's 3 votes for Rindo. But I don't see why there can't also be the Mirage Plateau. Which is nearby Rindo. And the way the sun reflects in the desert creates a mirage of the same plateau. I don't know how to spell plateau. I don't know how to spell anything. I think that could be pretty cool. The Forest of Madness. Just, it'd be sort of like, they're headed into Fangone Forest in Lord of the Rings. Just what madness drove them in there? They're headed into the Forest of Madness. Well, I mean, I guess it's just madness that drove them in there. It's very clear. Caves of Sorrow. Catnip Fields. Just very pleasant and sunny. A lot of mice. The cat fields. Why not? Catnip Fields. And some of the stuff we might need to go back. The Desert of Time of Zaithland. Insert row below. Desert of Time. That's actually a place in DnDTime in the Plane of Dreams called the Sands of Time. Very similar, I imagine, to what you have in mind for Zaith. Woof. All right, we've got a big chunk of terrains that we can mess around with and start working on, and these are just more ideas. We'll at some point, and again, things that should be done, I think, off stream are like arranging these and figuring out where they are relative to each other, because I just don't think I think that's more of a job for me than everyone working together. I will write it down. Oh my god, that's so perfect, Ninbins. Yes, of course it is a savanna. Took me a minute to make that connection. Oh, Bionic Sheep is saying the quintet should be the nonet. Love it. Done. And each of these were sort of the starting locations. And I think a lot of these locations, and I imagine like all of these, you know, crazier ones. And how do you feel about this in terms of a general, you know? Oh, now I have the nonet quintet, but we're just gonna call it the nonet. I feel like there's kind of a few different chunks of world, because the board needs to be fair one way or another. So the sort of board could be just the world, and tell me what you think of this. The world is set up like a dartboard with concentric rings. So there's like different sections of the map that are slowly to slowly kind of move outwards, and to keep things fair, on the continent, there's sort of a concentric ring where everything is sort of calm and peaceful, and all of the starting areas for each of these gods was in one of these rings. And then in order to capture more territory, they either had to move inward to more contested places that are also a little bit more on the calm side, and are probably very resource-rich, but would be hotly contested by other factions that are also trying to get to these central areas, or move towards these more chaotic areas that are on the outskirts of the world, that are, for one thing, kind of before what is the Evervale. And if you go on to these harder ones, Banachima, the crazier places, if you inhabit them, get you more points towards victory or legendary things. Absolutely. Same page, I think. But yeah. Easy in the middle. Resource rich, or easy in the mid, resource rich at the core, difficult and high point value on the outside. So yeah, like if you're able to set up a terrain in Coldaria where the land is destroyed like every week, then that's worth a ton of points. Luminarian asks, will you live stream a long campaign on this world after we finish it? Maybe. My first thought on that, and that's something that me and Jeremy were talking about. Jeremy, I think on day one, he's like, you do this. Everyone's going to want to see a game in it. And my thought on this is some of the cool stuff about this world, I think will be... I don't think this world is as fun to play in if you know exactly how it works going in. So I think this is a world that's designed for a campaign where the DM has just kind of crafted this, like you're using this, but your players know literally nothing about it. And maybe we can find a group of players, but I also don't know how fun it would be to watch if you already knew all the twists. Get some noobs, lol. So, my answer to your question is maybe. And if we do that, I might, change some things about the world to make it interesting. If nothing else, I'll tell you this, and this is a Pete Lyons promise right now. I will at least run a 3-session adventure set in this world. Like, I will do something in this world on stream at the completion of this world. I don't know if a long-term campaign, but, we'll at least get to see a little bit of play in it, I think. Of the Evervale could read those that are lost. Enter if you dare. Dib a player spot. Maybe, we'll see. That's a long way down the road. I'll have to figure out how we're gonna actually figure it out. But it'll have to be like you guys. I'm gonna write it. I'm just gonna copy Pastorino. Have fun getting your oracle to that crazy place where we might die. Yeah, let's go live there. And that's also some of the skill of manipulation and showing your abilities as a god. I'm sure there's also a lot of rules, and this is a thing that maybe this can be the next time we do this. We can really establish what it means, because we haven't really talked about what it means to be a cleric and a paladin in this world, because that's going to be something that I think is very interesting. Like, in particularly being a cleric of one of these gods. For one thing, I imagine they're only allowed to create a number of clerics that are proportional with their territory, and also you're going to have a strange set of powers. Probably, maybe we make a couple of homebrew spell lists at least to represent these gods a little bit better for what they are, Hold on a second. Let me get that thing on the Evervale while we're talking about it now, because elseways I'll forget. See, I knew there was a. Oh wait, that was the undersea thing. It was in the places section. I knew there was. That was, I believe, Ninbins that said that. Sign at the edge of the Evervale. If you ever leave, you will meet your maker. Also, gonna put that there. I like the idea that no matter what part of the world you walk to the edge of kind of the Evervale in, you always kind of arrive at this same point. And there could be a wall that spans on the length of the desert that people could live on and use to refine the sands. Let's do it. Whoops. We're going to put that in places, because that seems like a pace. Insert a row below. But yeah, we'll definitely do something in this world. Although I don't necessarily think we'll have time to do a whole long form campaign. So what else do we want to do? So we're getting near to the end. We got about a half an hour left, and I think it's fun to just do a couple of proper nouns and flesh them out in a little bit more detail and really get into the nitty gritty on a couple of places. So for starters, let's make a person, and I'm going to say off the bat that as I promised Liette earlier, I don't know if you're still hanging out, Liette, but I did. Oh wait, I just went back. Rye Guy Big Boy says, bro, looking sharp with the shirt and bow tie. Thank you very much, Rye Guy Big Boy. I hope you're still hanging out, Rye Guy. So, Liette, if you're still here, we're going to do a dragon. I know you wanted to do dragon, so that's the first thing. So, people. Insert row below. Guys, give me cool dragon names. Once we have 3 dragon names, we shall decide upon which of those 3, by popular vote, we want to actually flesh out here. But what are some cool ideas for a dragon name? I'm not sure if you saw my message, Explain Gem Dragons. I don't know where you sent that. I did not see it. I don't know much about gem dragons, but I do know that they're dragons with gems, and I think they're more neutral than the other dragons. Also, Fox has an idea or a thought. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the wheel on this one, and we are going to call this dragon. This is how a lot of my names, y'all. You're about to see a secret. Oh, nice. If Champion of the White. Champion of the White. Alright, and then we have Gverth the Challenger. Dragon McDragonface. But of course, Sheba, you would say Dragon McDragonface. Gverth the Challenger. And one more dragon. So, Fox in the Box says, what if one of the third-party entities in the Evervale is the god of undeath, and introduces rogue elements in liches, death knights, long-lived entities that can discover and meddle with the game and otherwise throw a wrench into things. I think that's a potentially cool idea, and I'm going to copy pasta it. And where do I want to put that? Because I don't want to save that idea, because I don't know if we're going to have time to flesh that out right now, but I want to keep it so it's on the table. We're going to just put that in the Pantheon. We'll put that above the Pantheon, because we haven't talked, or no, we'll put that below factions, because we have the rebellion, we have the factions, and I'll just leave that there. We'll come back to that guy. Oh gosh, we don't really need that anymore, do we? There's a dragon. All right, cool. And we have, all right, so right now we have Gverth, and we have Ravranyu, or Avernon the Undying. Avernon the Undying. Which one of these do we really want to get into the nitty-gritty on? Do we want to do Gverth, or Avernon? By show of hands. Everyone cast your chips one way or another. Luminarian says Avernon. Alright, we got 2 for Avernon. I assume Fox will go with... Ah, nice. Bionic Shiva, we're not doing Dragon McDragonface. I mean, we already know who Dragon McDragonface is. Dragon McDragonface, exactly, is a goofy but lovable dragon in the land of D&D time that occasionally saves Old Man McWizardface in difficult situations. Alright, so without further votes, I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going with Avernon the Undying. So, who is this person? For starters, what's their faction? To me, sounds like it's gonna be a chaotic evil thing. Ith for me, as I actually have a character by that name. Oh, nice! I dig. Bardic Shiva, I'm holding you to that. Please don't! I don't know how to have a goofy dragon come and save you in terrible situations. I can't just make something like that up. I don't have those DM chops to just conjure a dragon. Avernon the Undying is definitely defo evil. And that means that they are... because we need to come up with oracles for these things. So for each of these gods, we need to come up with 3 oracles. I think definitely an oracle of... it's one of the oracles of... I haven't learned all of our gods' names yet, shame upon me. But I shall soon, I've no doubt. Kuroshia. Oh, and that makes perfect sense. Kuroshia's domain is death and decay, so why wouldn't the Draco Lich be her death god? Yeah, whatever. Perfect. Great. Wonderful. An oracle of Korosia. Oh, only one R in Korosia, looks like. Whoop. Alright, so what makes Avernon cool? Why is this like an awesome character? Why were they chosen as an oracle? What do they do? Avernon could be the right hand of Korosia. Yeah, so as an oracle, for sure. The right hand. We've established that Korosia is not fun to play with and does things that just sort of ruins the game for other people. What do you think how does this character help reach that goal's end? For starters, Avernon wants to kill everything. I think it's going to be even more nuanced than that, because I think that, for one thing, also we need to decide what color this dragon was in life. So we're going with, do we want to go with Draco Lich for this? Comes out of anywhere and attacks cities. Attacks seemingly at random. I think the Draco Lich thing could be cool because, you know, we've already established that Korosia is a god, a goddess of undeath. So I think, you know, just having a Draco Lich works. Black Dragon, for sure. I think they are chaotic evil normally. Either, yeah, Opal Dragon's in agreement. So perfect. Well, Draco Lich, I think it's both. It's a Black Dragon Draco Lich, because, you know, the dragon had to be a certain color in life, and then in Undeath has become something else. So I think it, as such, it raises dead. I think it has the ability to raise the dead. I mean, I don't know if that's just inherently in the kit, but I imagine that this Draco Lich goes around and raises the dead of different people's armies. And so, okay, how do you guys like this? Avernon flies like a vulture to battlefields and raises the dead of both sides. That seems like a very chaotic, evil thing to do. When there's sort of a, like, in the wake of great battles, for example, lawful good and lawful evil are forced to, or are come into some conflict, and both sides are, you know, engaged in, I think, yeah, Luminary, I think you can definitely talk. Dragons are always smart, and a Lich, ooh, they're very smart. So these two battles come into conflict, or these two sides come into conflict, and there's a great war, and, you know, there's tons of losses on both sides. And then Avernon comes in, raises all of those dead, and now they're not only adding in this strange, chaotic, unknown force, he just animates them aimlessly. They're also adding in this psychological aspect where the soldiers are now forced to, 1, kill people that they've already killed, or 2, kill people on their own side that were their allies. creating just a huge element of chaos in this fight that's not fun for the people. It's not glorious to kill zombies of your friends. That is not a fun thing. And I think that works very well into Kuroge's sort of style of just making the game shitty for the other players to play. Maybe he could use dark magic to turn human and appear as someone popular. I like that idea, but I think that fits better on a character related to a god that we've already really established in that vein, which would be Vasto, who we've talked about is, or this guy, Legeros, we've already established as an agent of Vasto who uses illusion magic, and we actually haven't figured anything out from that. So I'm just gonna tack that idea right onto this guy. No, I did it again! Every time. And then what else about him? Kind of refined but calculating. See, refined doesn't feel quite right to me. I think if we're going to do a refined dragon, I think we want to put that dragon on Tizel. Because I think that could be pretty... how's Avernon tie into Ith and Gaverth? Well, I don't know if Ith and Gaverth will necessarily do anything with it. I just threw them down. But they don't necessarily tie in. Those could be dragons related to different gods. Also, Gaverth, the Challenger, has evoked... the Challenger from Gaverth has just evoked a very interesting idea in me, which this idea that there could be neutral mobs. The Gaverth, the Challenger, doesn't sound like he's associated with any of those factions. He sounds like just a tough dragon that battles people. That's all I got for that. It's just like a tough dragon that's like towards the middle of the world that battles people. Maybe he's just a mob with a bunch of horde that if anyone can take down Gaverth, they made him in particularly strong. They get the treasure within, and that's like a big buff for whatever their faction and their kingdom is. Sort of like how, in MOBAs they have big neutral mobs, like in League of Legends they have Baron Nashor. If you kill Gaverth the Challenger, your team gets a buff, essentially. So I'm just gonna put neutral. I'm just gonna put neutral mob down for Gaverth, and he challenges people. Sounds like he would. If Gaverth dies, Tizel loses 2 points. Love it. So Ith should be Tizel's guy. Yeah, maybe. Maybe Tizel's guy. Alright, cool. And we're also getting near, so I think of Vernon, we have a cool idea for this Draco Lich now, who flies around raining on death and terror at Kuroge's whim, right hand of Kuroge. And I think they're also very intelligent, and they do a lot of planning and stuff like that. And we're getting pretty near the end of the night. So Ith could work with one of the good gods. And I'll just put it on that. Maybe one of the good gods. And I'm also getting a little bit tired because this is just a lot of talking. Maybe one of the good gods. So I think we can wrap up sometime pretty soon. I want to do one more proper noun, though. So what's a cool event? We haven't done any events yet today, so I want to decide one more thing. So right now we have exactly one event, which was that Lux's kingdom, which was winning, fell. From some other god's trickery. And we also know a lot about Lux's kingdom, Visanya, which is the only territory he has. He's down to basically just his starting territory, and that is growing weak and getting near to falling as well. So we decided that happened around the middle of the game, and he's been a slow decline ever since. So yeah, probably, that's a good point. I'll add that to this event. It was probably, since we said from the trickery, we didn't know who the trickery guy was, but we do know now that was Legethos. So that's very good. And I'm sure it was like a combination thing. Maybe some of Vasto's, maybe Vasto is like a thieves guild that's been stealing from them and weakening them. I think it's... so who's winning now? And this brings us back to one of our core design principles, which is that we're building this as a world for a D&D campaign. And I think in the world of a D&D campaign, since most characters are going to be good, the most interesting thing to have it be is that the winning team right now is evil. Evil is winning. And really, all gods are evil, so technically, evil. All the gods are really evil in this instance. Even though, like, their personalities are good, their disregard for human life, even the good god Lux is still playing a game and still, like, you know, toying with lives like this. So I guess they're all evil. But good, at least in terms of the way they interact with the world. So yeah, maybe lawful evil is winning now. I could be all of them. I don't know. Maybe they're all in a deadlock, and it's just, you know, it's just kind of Lux that's near last place. And I think next week we can establish this properly, and we'll actually put together like a pie chart of, or not a pie chart, like a table of how many points everyone has out of the number of, you know, the total points that could be obtained on the board, and how close everyone is to victory. Tizel sounds best. Why not? We can say that, but we're talking about an event. What's just like a cool thing that could have happened in this world? And we can make it not even tie in with the gods. Like, and that's what I want to do next time, is really stop talking about gods and start talking about regular people and just small scale stuff. Because I think we now have a very good and clear idea of like what the gods are like. And, you know, everything will be in the context of those gods, but not necessarily talked about. It's just like, what's like a thing that could have happened? A big battle. Like, maybe we can do a battle. What's a famous battle in this world? Insert row above. Maybe this is the first. So how about this? The first person to ever go for the Evervale. The discovery of the Evervale. Who was it? People are terrified. Spoiler, they never came back. People are terrified of entering since then. I think that we could... the ascension of the floaty place. I think that we could really play around with this event and make it very important. Because... let's think about how this shaped the world. Like, people have just been kind of spreading out. There's these crazy territories that are on the outside, and people are just... I imagine it's not just some farmer. This has to be an explorer. Yeah. An explorer ventured to the farthest reaches and found the Evervale. And maybe this was a moment. We'll put Dan as a tentative name for this explorer, and then I'll add him to people over the course of the week. Explorer Dan. So he ventured out to the farthest of the reaches of the world and found the Evervale. But what happened next? What's the story here, and why is this cool? It's one thing for him to just... So imagine you're this individual. You don't know what we know about the world, and you just want to see that. You just want to see where the world ends. Either you come out the other side, or you find the drop-off. You don't know what's out there. And you just find this fog. And at the front of it, there is just a simple crafted sign of sturdy make, kind of near indestructible, it would seem, that tells him that he's about to meet his maker, or whatever it is that we decide to put on that Evervale sign. Maybe the explorer wrote the signs. That's also very interesting. He was the only one that came back. He found out about the gods, but he said if anyone else goes back, they'll die. I don't know if we want to necessarily go that deep on this guy, but what I'm more interested in is how this event affected like politics in the world. So, for example, maybe he didn't go through the Evervale the first time. Maybe the world had a brief moment of truce where they saw this thing on the outskirts. They saw their reality bounded, and fighting ceased as the gods lost influence for a moment. And everyone just kind of agreed that they wanted to explore this thing. However, as they learned about it, yeah, they sacrificed, criminals sacrificed. Yeah, so it's just like this huge meeting where all of like these leaders, like maybe like all of the oracles, maybe just other important figures, all of these individuals met at the Evervale, and they saw the edges of their reality, and they thought, well, this is odd, and did experiments on it and tried to figure out what it was. And upon realizing that they just could not, like, their magic couldn't pierce through, anyone they sent through never came back. I like the idea of the Luminarian saying that they sacrifice criminals. I bet you that's exactly what Tizel did. I bet you Lux didn't send criminals. I bet you he sent willing volunteers and brave explorers. And and then Tizel, whoever the leader of that kingdom is, absolutely just sent just their trash to just go into it like cannon fodder. Since down elemental dragons is a grand test. Perhaps. Event of God sent a scouting party into the endless darkness, and only one person came back. No idea how the others died. Yeah, that's another cool one. Scouting party into the dark. Party into the dark. And I don't know about necessarily, dragons coming out of the veil. Maybe, I don't know if necessarily they sent them down as a test, but I just like the idea of this being the grand test, just something called that. And I'm going to put that at 2,500. And this is, I imagine that's sort of like in Mario Party, where they have, like, there's only 5 turns left before the game's over, and they evaluate everyone, and Koopa goes, I think this guy's going to win, and you get a bonus. I imagine it's a lot like that. That's what the grand test is. We don't know what necessarily that is. But that's another cool event. Alright, so we're building a little bit of history and talking about how all this stuff works. They discover a lich. Well, I think one of the things about discovering a lich, it's interesting to see, like, because that's a question of, like, if there's a lich in the world, then they're still part of a kingdom, and I think there's an assumption that everyone's still, like, working towards the cause. I guess there could be powerful individuals that just aren't aligned to a faction and consider their own strength over the year of the gods, but I think for the most part, like, you know what, I'm just going to put it down, because I think that's a complicated idea. The Lich. Just put it down as the Lich. But I don't think there's any reason, like, and since we're doing on Get, we have, like, a Draco Lich, I don't think there's any reason, like, a Lich just couldn't be part of one of these factions. Year 400 is the meeting. Yeah, I like it. 400. I think the year it was discovered, I think it took time. 395 was when the first person found the Evervale. Yep, that's exactly, and Shiba, we're on the same page, exactly, as how the world began, with everything already established. All right. Yeah, nothing to be sorry for, Fox. I like the idea. Year 50, First War. Throw it in. There's more and more stuff. All right, and then one more. The next idea is the last idea, which means it's that's Opal Dragon has the last idea of the night. You got a year on that one? 50. I'm just gonna go 51 for style, and we can establish details on these things later. And I'm gonna go through and also do details on some of these things. I love that, Shiva. The discovery of other nations and the First War. the minute they saw each other, they started fighting, as they were sort of programmed to do. And year 95, a desert is formed. And I think the nice thing, big magical explosion turning a forest to desert. And I really like that, because something like this huge magical explosion creating a desert, we can tell a story about that. We can talk about that'll have a name, like, and we'll go into details later on these things. I mean, maybe it's the Desert of Time, but my thought is that, like, that forest, someone was in that forest, someone cared about that forest, and that is now an apocalyptic event that is carried in their memories, where they talk about the explosion of blah, 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 and they curse the name of blah, 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 who created it. Weapons of mass destruction of magic to form the world. Yeah, like, hundo percent. All right, cool. That's it for today. As it's getting near to 11 o'clock, which is when our stream ends, or 11 o'clock, at least Eastern time. I don't know what time it is for you, but let us call it there. Thank you very much to everyone who contributed tonight. As I was impressed last time, so am I impressed this time with just the sheer creative energy that all of you have been putting out. We got some awesome new stuff to add to the world this time. Again, and I'm actually going to change it right now, because it's so hard to keep up with you guys. Now that you have that link, you can now comment. I'll link it one more time here, and it's also in the useful links on the Discord. So anyone who has ideas and wants to, for one thing, like, if you want to clean up some of the language, I would absolutely love it if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to, like, you know, make some of these just slapdash notes that I took on maybe an idea that you had and adjust them and make them better, I would love that help. Eventually, I would love for this document to be very clean and, like, readable. I went through, for example, a lot of the notes last time and just converted our ideas into language, which you can see here and read. And I'm going to continue to do that, but I would love help on it. And just if you have more ideas about kind of small stuff, fleshing out gods, please check it out, and we'll work on it, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. So again, thank you all so much for coming and hanging out and building stuff. You've made DnDTime Worlds awesome these last couple weeks, and I hope to continue to see you as we build this world into the future. We have a name. We're going to draw our name from last week. That's pretty exciting. Refresh results. Woo! With a commanding lead, as it were. The winner of last week's name was Osirum. It's a very cool name. So, man, that one crushed. The winner of last week's name shall be Osirum. And we will continue on. Next week. Was that 1 year's Luminarian? I couldn't quite remember. Yeah, but anyway, we'll continue on next week. We'll do more names. If anyone wants to get a last-minute squeeze in of a name for this week, let me know if you didn't get a chance to make one up yet. And I don't know. I think that's about it. Tune in to DnDTime Talks tomorrow. We're going to be talking about, and this is a very vague topic that we're going to be talking about tomorrow. So we may refine it a bit more before then. But right now, the plan is to talk about playing your character. Which is a huge subject that we couldn't possibly cover in a talks, but we'll see what we can do with it. And that's going to be tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same time that tonight started. So tune into DnDTime Talks with me and Jeremy, and then Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time on Fridays, which you probably all know about. But if you don't know about Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time, it is a show that myself and community luminary Jeremy, the other creator of this, the Land of D&D Time, the other big boss. He's usually in every other show. He is in every other show on D&D Time and on this channel. And we run 3 one-shots every Friday night with members of the audience. So if you're interested in playing one of those, the sign-ups are still available for that. So check it out. And yeah, that's it. I love you guys. Thank you very much for hanging out and sharing and building this world with me. You guys the best. Farku sneaking in at the last moment. Hello, Farku. And I think that's about it. So without further ado, I hope to see you all next week on DnDTime Worlds, or next week after next. This is every other week. This isn't every week. And I'm Pete, and I'm Pete, and this is DnDTime Worlds. Thank you, everybody. Oh wait, I gotta hit a button. Oh.